Okay, so officially welcome. Namaste, all. So what I was saying was that these are recorded, and now it's just good for all of you to know that these are recorded, and you can come back to these at any point, any time, as you feel to. But one of the things I might suggest is if you're writing notes or you're jotting things down, and there's a part of the time together that you think, oh, I really want to come back to that and reflect on it, just write where we are in our class time. That'll help you to find that also in the recordings. I often forget to say that at the beginning of the courses, but I find this is really helpful also for some of the online programs that I've done. And someone suggested that in their own way of moving through it, that they just jotted down, oh, that happened, about 30 minutes in, if I check, or about 60 minutes in, right? So knowing from there. Okay, so we officially start these 5 weeks together in this Women's Ayurveda and Tantra, the first level of our online immersion. And maybe I can just share with you that this program, this immersion, emerged from requests. Really, that's where it came from. I never intended to curate a course specifically, to this intention, but over the years, sitting with groups of women and sharing, both just as sangha, and then also sometimes sharing what had been accumulated and blossomed here with the women in my life. More and more women started to ask that we have spaces like this, and especially safe and secure spaces where we could share some of the blessings of Ayurveda and Tantra as they are specific for us in this embodiment and karma of being born as women, the gift of being born in womanhood. So our time together over the next 5 weeks will intend to explore a whole host of things that relate to this thing we call woman, and to bring us into deep inquiry for each and every one of us, an inquiry of what that means, what that looks like thus far, what that has engendered in our lives, how we've been traversing our womanhood, and all the things that are offered from the Vedic tradition specifically around this. So that's the intent. What happened after the first time I offered this, which was a few years ago, is the women said more. And so we actually created a second and a third level as well, because there's just such a plethora of sharing that can occur. So we'll see what happens. Some of you I had private calls with before you registered, and I shared with you that that of course there's a certain content syllabus, if I can say it in that way, and there's PDF slides, which I'll also share with you. But besides that, this isn't just shared in a rote way. It's not like I have content or a curriculum that we get through. We're going to see specifically for this group, for this collectivity, for this women's circle, if I can really say it in that way, that our group of coming together, what emerges from here, what questions you ask, what things are more of integration for your lives and you feel to point to more. So I really welcome this to be a space that's alive to us as a group of women. And I also really, really honor the fact that each one of you comes with your own life's trajectory and your own lived wisdom and your own lived ripening. So there's so much that I learned from all of you sharing as well. So we'll see. I'm excited also to encounter each other and encounter this specific group and configuration. How's the sound feeling for everyone? I just want to check in and see how it is for you. And yeah, everyone's good with that? Okay, great. Very good. Some of you are used to a different space from which I'm sharing, but it seems in this next few weeks I'll be sharing in this space because we have another class going on in the Shala in the studio. So I'm in this other loft space, which is a nice intimate space also for us to all be together. I'm going to welcome us before we share, and that will really be the beginning of our time together for each one of you to take a moment of sharing with each other. But before we do that, I'm going to welcome us to chant together. Okay, so this might be new for some of you. Chanting might be something that's fresh, or some of you have come to other courses or immersions or pilgrimages. I mean, Serena has been in India and elsewhere, in Mexico and in other places in the world with me. So however we might have encountered each other, those who have, we've chanted before. But for some of you, this might be a fresh practice, a fresh sadhana. So don't be intimidated. Just find your way. You can try to repeat maybe the mantras sound wholly new to you and foreign. And you'll see the way in which this nada yoga or mantra yoga is a vibratory science. So it's not a science of knowing the cognitive meaning of the sounds that we're saying. It's a science of really, on the feminine level, feeling the vibration of what it is that moves through you. So as we chant, just feel the vibration. And if it kind of comes out different than it comes out of me, over time it'll find its way. It'll find its flow. Chanting is one of the most beautiful ways that we can allow prana shakti. We can allow the life energy of shakti, of the feminine, to really start to get activated and to pour through and to create purification in our being and to invoke certain energies. So we'll play with that together, okay, over these next few weeks. So I welcome you to sit in a comfortable position, whether you're on a chair or you're seated on the floor, in whatever way you're positioned. And then if it feels comfy for you, let's allow the hands to settle into the heart space. So just allow the hands to be here, residing in Anjali Mudra, in this gesture of self-settlement, this gesture of heartful settlement. And as we reside here, we'll come to firstly chant this beautiful Shanti Pata, a peace prayer, a peace mantra. And it asks, may we be nourished, may we be strengthened, and may there be no discord within or between us, may there be great peace. So in all that's received here, may it be a contribution to harmony and peace within our own being, but also onto this planet at this time. Repeating after me. Om Sahana Vavatu. Sahana Bhunaktu. Saha Viriyam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvi Shavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Just enjoying for a moment the reverberation, feeling the resonance, feeling in whatever way the vibration of the mantra as its significance, as its meaning is planting into each cell, each fiber of the being. May it bring a resonance with this understanding. May I be strong and nourished, and may there be no discord, physically, emotionally, mentally, and collectively. May there be great harmony and peacefulness here, now, now, now. And then as we settle here, keep the eyes closed, but allow the hands to just gently rest in the lap and allow the whole body to feel a comfort and ease of seatedness, not an attempt to sit or a thinking that we're doing something. Instead, just be here in your own ease. Be here in your own quiet presence. And let's truly feel the sense of being here, that we've arrived. Even in the wonderment or the curiosity of what this time might bring for us, we just simply sit here, even in those energies of open availability, of curiosity, a certain okayness with that energy. And then let yourself become attuned to the sankalpa that can be felt in the heart, the sacred intention of our heartfulness. What's the intention that has you seated here now? Not even the intention from when you registered, but the intention now. In the presence of now, what is it that asks you to be here? Why are you here? What's the longing of the heart? Feeling the clarity of that. Listening to that for another moment and feeling the energy also of the intention. Not just the inner dialogue, but the felt sense of what it is to be attuned to your intention. Enjoying one more nice full breath with the eyes closed here. And then slowly, as it feels good, start to allow the eyes to gently open. And if it also feels right, you can move gently, maybe even enjoy a stretch. Just feel the freshness of coming here now. Okay, so let's share from there. We have that time. Really, I feel now that we can co-create collective sharing that can bring safety and intimacy, and also just a sense of connectedness with each other across airwaves and across seas for some of us, and uh, irrespective of where we may be in the world. And as we hear each woman share, and I would suggest that you share your name, maybe where you're joining from, and your sankalpa, what your intention is in being here. And that maybe we also share a vulnerability, something we're a little bit vulnerable about, like, I sure hope Tiffany doesn't talk about this, or I sure hope I don't have to share about this, or whatever it might be. Maybe a vulnerability that comes up just in even coming to a space like this. As we share that, really a deep listening to each one of the women in the circle, really feeling that we're sitting in circle together and feeling their heart of being as they share. So your name, where you're joining from, your intention, and a vulnerability. And let's take maybe 2 to 3 minutes, each one of us, to share, okay? And we can go sort of popcorn. Who would like to start? Who feels to begin? We'll just move in this organic way.
I don't mind starting, Tiffany.
Okay, and I won't interrupt. So I just really want to be part of the circle. So after Shalini shares, whoever feels to move from there. Okay, and if we take a pause for silence. So let's just continue from there. Thank you, love.
So my name is Shalini, and I am joining in from Vancouver, British Columbia. It's very cold here, actually, in the middle of May. Um, my intention, I have multiple. I'll share one. And my one of the intentions is lately I've been on a journey of healing, and I have become a sun and a moon chaser. And I've been waking up with the sun the last month. And every time I see the moon, I just begin to radiate. So, really, what I would like to indulge in with the conversations here in this group of women is cyclical natures. How does that affect us as women? The last full moon that we had, I actually had a very intense period and I was late. So, for me, chasing the sun, chasing the moon in the last 2 months, especially, um, what does that mean for me as a woman? Vulnerability is sexuality. Um, so I've, like I had mentioned, I've been going through some healing, and I feel that there is definite restrictions in my sexuality, and a restriction such as sometimes I don't feel anything. And I think that is a conversation that might be important too in this community. Thank you.
I can go next. My name is Abby, and I am from Kingsville, Ontario, so southwestern Ontario, in Canada. And I'm just really, I've just sort of awakened to Ayurveda through this Ayurveda immersion with Tiffany. And when I saw this woman in Tantra, I was very intrigued because I want to reconnect to that divinity within, I guess. I want to reawaken that connection to my sensuality and reconnect with my husband in that way, and more of like being present together instead of it being, just having sex to have sex. Like I want to feel it in a new way. I want to, I just want to immerse myself in that and see what will awaken. And yeah, I'm just almost like a little nervous. Like, what's it going to be like? What's it going to take? I don't know. But, it feels good to just take it one day at a time and see what, Tiffany shares and what we all learn here together. And yeah, just kind of go from there. I'm just looking forward to diving into it. So thank you.
I'm just going to say I'll pick up next.
Michelle, I think you tried to share, but something's going on with your sound. No, it's bubbling, it's crackling. So something is either half plugged in or not plugged in. Something's going on there. And then Shauna, I heard you.
I can wait a couple of minutes.
We heard you at the beginning, Michelle, but now we didn't hear you so well. Okay, you fix something and then Shauna can go, okay?
Hi. So I'm just checking in from Newcastle, Ontario. I think not far from Peterborough. I feel like I've just been intrigued by this I was started to follow with a few different products recently purchased. I don't know what they're called at the moment, but so I was drawn to your page and social media, and I just kept seeing this, and as I said, it's speaking to me, and I was questioning it and deciding whether or not, and then I was like, you know what, Happy Mother's Day to me, and purchase this. So my vulnerability, I feel the same way. I just feel I'm a mom of two boys, and I just feel I've lost connection with my husband in an intimate way. And I feel like there's no spontaneity and time, and it's very tricky. So I just want to make things more exciting, I guess, and I'm hoping that's what I'm here for.
Can you all hear me? Not sure.
It's like we can hear you, but something is wrong with it's bubbling, it's crackling. Like significantly crackling that we can't make out, but we can see that you're trying to speak. We can hear that you're trying to speak. Yeah, maybe try without the headphones.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we hear you perfectly.
Amazing. Well, hello, ladies. I'm Michelle, coming from Ajax, Ontario, so just east of Toronto here in Canada. So my intention of coming here really was to just dive in deeper and explore my femininity, that energy of I've just naturally always been a people pleaser, and over the past couple years, I figured out that that had a lot to do with like a childhood wound of like abandonment and whatnot. And so I've always wanted to prove myself to other people, and in turn, that kind of left me with a kind of like a hole of not embracing that self-love aspect. And so that's kind of what I want to explore, being able to, during even that chant, I think, Tiffany, when you're just like, oh, like, what do you feel, or what is kind of your intention in this present moment? And the thing that kept on kind of circling around was like, I just want to accept where I am now and to love myself now type thing. So I want to kind of explore that and not have my pleasure be based on somebody else or outside factors, right? So that's kind of what I want to explore.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Julie, and I live near Omemee, Ontario, which probably you've heard of Peterborough, maybe it's close to there. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So why am I here? It sounded really interesting. I can't even remember what I was thinking because I signed up like weeks ago. But I know that I'm maybe in a later stage than some of you in my life. And I want to connect to joy, have a reverence for femaleness and womanhood, and yeah, just a real connection to life that is joyful, and a sense of the feminine aspect being sacred, and the vulnerability is that in my era and my circle, this was not talked about at all. Like, even my mom, by the time she got around to talking to me about it, I'd already heard literally on the street. So there was no sense of reverence or joy. It was more like, what? Really? That can't be right. Why wouldn't somebody else of authority have told me? So yeah, I guess that's it in a nutshell.
I can go next. Hi, my name is Shalini. I am from Oshawa, Ontario. Currently, I'm at work, so if you are not able to hear my voice because I'm talking really slow, please let me know. I think I just found out about the course last night, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe, like, I've been confused for almost like a year now. I just got married a month ago in a very traditional Indian wedding, and that wasn't like, it wasn't like consensual in a way. Yes, I wanted to be with this human, but like not consensual with the labels that I was put in under. Like, as woman, it wasn't embracing of like womanhood. It was more like, oh, you're welcome to the motherhood, you're going to be a wife, you're going to be like a sister-in-law, like daughter-in-law, like all these labels. So I just really want to connect with who I am as an individual, as a woman. And I think I'm holding a lot of pressure, trauma from all these years of toxic relationships, and like just like a very bad relationship with my own self, um, in my yoni. So I don't know, like, as I'm learning more about Ayurveda and like how your emotion energies interact with your body functions, I'm learning more that I'm holding so much in my yoni that I want to let go of. So I don't know, maybe tools, maybe understand what is, yeah, I don't know. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I'll go ahead and go now, if that's okay. I'm Serena, and I'm in a place called Glide, Oregon, which is a pretty small town. And I signed up for this class because I really miss Tiffany and her teaching, and I have been pretty isolated, and the kinds of people that I'm friends with here, I don't really have a lot in common with them as far as yoga and meditation and things like that. So I was feeling pretty lonely, and I felt like all of the relationships I was having were taking energy from me, and I wasn't getting any back. So I'm feeling pretty drained emotionally, physically, spiritually. So yeah, I was just hoping to have a little more joy and some recharging here. And I've also been struggling a lot with perimenopause and menopause and having no one explain to me what was going to happen to my body. And yeah, there's been a lot of surprising changes there. So I was hoping to have some guidance in that area as well.
Oh, thank you, Women, so much. As I'm sitting with you, okay, so I'm currently Tiffany, and I'm currently in Wakefield, Quebec. And some of you know I recently moved here. So I was more in the Peterborough area, hence the resonance with some of you from Peterborough and the GTA also. But now living in more in the Gatineau Hills of Quebec, and so enjoying being here and the nature that's here. And my intentionality, I really tried to stay true to Sankalpa as the whisper, the voice of beingness moment to moment. So even though a few years ago this immersion may have emerged, in this very moment, the Sankalpa is to be in this space with all of you. I'm in a bit of awe and wonderment, I'm noticing actually, as I'm listening to each one of you, to see what will unfold, what will be the gift and the guidance and the grace that Shakti will provide in this space. And I feel very touched, actually, very moved by each one of you and how that will serve, how these things will come through and how they'll serve all of us together. And also I'm here to learn. Sometimes this mouth opens and things move through in service, which I didn't know before. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens and to see what's shared because of us, really because of us and our unique dynamic of coming together. So I actually really love this space of coming together in Women's Circle. And thank you, Zoom, that we can do it in this form as well, that we can be together in this intimate way. And a vulnerability for me. Well, I'm a pretty open book, it seems, is what's happened with all of this sharing. But nevertheless, I think something that many of you, especially the ones that have been with me more often, don't know is that I am quite introverted as well. Even though I can be very extroverted in the sharing, there's something of me that also is quite cocooned. So I feel even vulnerable in trusting that you all trust me to share, to share what it is in my own limited competency, if I can say it in that way, whatever has landed here in this life. So there's a bit of vulnerability always around that in the beginning of any new group and any new time that you're trusting me, with something that will integrate into your lives. So I feel touched around that as well and moved. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I also want to take a moment and look directly at the camera as well to say welcome to the ones who can't join us live and that I feel your presence here and we're welcoming you also. So maybe we all say hi, we welcome you women, you're here with us in the heart, and through astral connection, through the connection in the more subtle fields, we really welcome you here as well and we hold you here. And some of you I know will be able to join sometimes, and others of you won't be able to join live at all, but you're here watching and being with the recording. So you're very, very in the space, in this present space with us. And I hope that this serves you as well in that way. Okay, so I have slides that will sort of go along with our time to create a framework But we'll come on and off of those slides, and the way in which I share as well. And those slides will also be provided to you so that you can come back to them. But they're just really a support for our time together. Also, let me just come now a bit more into this framework. Also, at any point throughout our time together, if there's a question that's arising in the presence of now, please feel free to bring that forth in various ways. One way is you can put it into the chat if you feel that that's more flowing for you. Another is you can directly interrupt me. To be honest, I'm absolutely okay with that. There are natural pauses, natural sandhis, natural little, gaps when I'm speaking, and it seems to work very easily. So for example, now I say easily, there's a little pause, and if you feel to say, Tiffany, I have something that I'd like to ask, or please move forward in that way. I love the energy of Shakti. If we can be together in that feminine way of being discursive and alive and joyful and enthusiastic, and the questions will also guide where we move together, the river of flow that happens together. So feel very open to do that. And I also feel that this is important, that this is a discursive collective time. Of course, on some level, thank you for entrusting me to guide us to some degree or be the instrument through which this guidance occurs. But this really is a collectivity. I see it as that, and I feel that's really important. So in that way, as things arise, please allow them to be and to be settled into the space between us as much as possible. So that could be questions or comments or things that are arising for you. Okay. After each class, you'll receive an email a day or two later with the recording link. So the recording link for an unlisted, so a private video of this on YouTube. So you'll have that there for you. And after the 5 weeks, I'll also send an email with all 5 links. So you can always go back, or actually with a playlist link, which will have all 5 of the classes there. Also, anything we go over and that there's resources to send you, those will also be connected to the email that will be sent out to you. Okay, just so everyone has those logistical knowings. And we'll give a little break halfway through. So we have a 2-hour time together, and we'll have a little break so that we really feel like we're in intimate space together. What I notice is we don't integrate these things if we just feel only in our receptive energy. So we need to activate that inner marriage, the energy both of our receptive, which is deeply feminine, but also the active energy where we ask questions, we write things down, we're engaged on some level. And that marriage of energies is actually very important for us to be able to integrate the most that we can from these times together, especially when it's online. So I really welcome you to have that, and then we'll have a bio break. But of course, if you need to get up and move, or if there's anything you need to do, you can just always turn your video off and go and do what you need to do. Or if kids are coming in the space, or if dogs are jumping in the space, I don't know. Different things can happen, right? So whatever it might be that might be occurring, feel free in those ways. Does anyone have any logistical questions? Are there any questions that come up that'll help you feel more settled in our space together? Anything that's comfortable or uncomfortable at the present moment that you would like to ask or check in around with me? Okay, otherwise we can start together. So let me start by pulling up our slides, and we'll do a little bit of a briefing of what we're going to go over in the 5 sessions together. Does everyone see that? Is everyone able to see that? Thumbs up? Yes, okay, good. If you're ever on a phone, there are other ways to see this, okay? Just so you know, you'll have to slide over those kinds of things, but for now, here we are. So this is a very interesting image that my designer made. It's always funny for me to see myself. So women, this time together, really, if the sankalpa of the sharing around Ayurveda and Tantra for women, and the shared sankalpa, the shared intention that Ayurveda and Tantra has to reveal to us as women, what could it be? There are these 3 things that I've really brought as a synopsis of maybe the 3 primary pointings that Ayurveda and Tantra have to reveal to us, especially for our womanhood and for our feminine lives. And the first one is this recognition of our interconnectedness. There's something so beautiful in both Ayurveda and Tantra as Vedic lineages, as Vedic teachings, that bring us into a deep recognition that we're not separate. Both of them are, if we can call them spiritual traditions, or if we can call them modalities, whatever name you might give to them, but both of them are existential recognitions that we are not separate from nature or from each other. That ultimately interconnection is our very primary nature, that we are always entangled and connected and together and networked and not separate. And so you're going to notice that a lot of what we share and a lot of what is explored and dove into in this space, what we dive into here together, is going to affirm this again and again. And if this isn't already a lived wisdom for us, although it is, as women, we know this. We know this. We're so communitarian. We're so communal. We know that we're not separate. But that knowing, that gnosis, that what we call in the Vedic tradition, the jnana, the true experiential knowing, will hopefully land deeply for us and bring a great amount of healing and freedom to know that we're not separate. A couple of weeks ago, I had a beautiful group of women who came for a retreat at the Shala, and we had a session about Ayurveda for women specifically. And we just sat together in women's circle. And we had women of all different ages and different parts of the lifespan, like some of you were sharing. Maybe I'm of a different age, or I have other concerns. Some of us are in perimenopause or postmenopause. Some of us are in phases of fertility. Some of us are in phases of menstruation and the challenges around that. Some of us have dealt recently with everything from maybe abortion or miscarriage. Some of us might be dealing with postpartum challenges. So all different phases might be here for us. As we were sitting together in this circle, the women, I could literally see the network and the fuzz between us, if I can say it in that way, starting to grow like a fishnet. You know, it was like everything was starting to find its way to bring this recognition of interconnection. As each woman was sharing, you could see the lived connectedness. Oh, I've been there, or I will be there, or my sister has been there. And something started to happen in which you could viscerally feel the space between us started to become much more lived as this cosmos, actually, like a universality was lived there in that moment. And so Ayurveda and Tantra, for women especially, brings us, and I've noticed this for myself, it brings us into a deep recognition of this, that I'm not separate. If I have come to the falsity of belief that I am separate, or if I've come to the forgetting of my interconnectedness, Ayurveda and Tantra has something to offer me here. It has a great remembrance to offer me that yes, I'm not separate from nature, from other beings, from this planet, from the earth, from all of the tiny beings as well. There is this inherent connectedness that's here. So this is a beautiful feminine return, as I've written here. Community, collaboration, togetherness. These are all terms of the feminine. These are all terms of prakriti, of nature. And so we start to understand that again. It's like an againness. We come back to what we already knew. And much of our time together will be about renewing this spirit of knowing, of this knowing. And it will also, in that recognition of interconnectedness, both Ayurveda and Tantra have much to offer us in the reverence of nature. To return to our love for and our reverence and our honoring of nature, which is something, especially in a world more lived in by patriarchy and capitalism and monetization. This reverence of nature has been lost. Can we not say that? Can we not see that as well? So having a deep honoring for nature is something that Ayurveda and Tantra both offer us, and hopefully that we'll also gain in our time together. And I always see that these groups of us coming together, this is already here for us. Many of you have a deep connection and love for nature, but it might deepen. It might find more profundity for each one of us. So this is the first shared intentionality that we can see with Ayurveda and Tantra, that it offers us this recognition of interconnectedness. And the second is the savoring of the now. The entirety of the Vedic tradition brings us into this intimacy with the present moment, into the intimacy with the now. And so, not just as women, but as beings, simply as beings on this planet at this time, both of these traditions coming from the Vedas, funneling from the Vedas, they come from one and the same mama and papa. They offer us great pointings to, again, remember that all that truly exists is nowness. The past and future and all of the nostalgia and the projection that tend to be the tangled webs of our lives that take our mind out of its place of pure freedom and our beings out of just the bliss of being alive. All of that stuff that gets tangled in the should haves and also in the what could be's, all the what ifs, all of that really becomes blockers, and we're going to talk about that more, to the simplicity and the great resounding beauty of being alive now. And Ayurveda and Tantra continuously point us to this moment is all that exists. This moment is truly all that exists. And that's why I asked you, what's your sankalpa now? Not 4 weeks ago when you registered for this course. You know, there's other people also who registered and then had to drop out. There's a lot of things that happen in the time that I post an immersion or I post a course. A lot of movements occur, especially with women, right? We have a lot of things that we're balancing, and Shakti is dynamic. So a lot of things come up and move. And so in that same way, of course, you know, part of the nature as women is that we have this dynamism in the fields, even in the inner fields of our minds, into past, into the future. But Ayurveda and Tantra have this great welcoming to the fullness of now. The entirety of the Vedas does. It says that our ultimate joy, not the ephemeral happiness, not the passing happiness that's dependent upon all these external variables, but really the true joy of being is found in the anchoring to now. So much of what we're going to explore together is exactly that. How do we become more joyfully anchored in the existence now, in my existence now, in my aliveness now? And some of you shared, even in our early sharing already, you know, I want to come back to some joy with my husband, or some joy with myself, or some joy with being alive, right? And the Vedas offer us that that's found in really savoring what is the now. So savoring the presence of this very moment and the sensual aliveness that steeps us in the now. So we're going to explore a lot the sensuality of being a human embodiment, and that sensuality is a direct channel to the now. That we can tap into our sensuality, and I'm not saying sexuality, I'm saying sensuality. When we can be with the five senses, we can be with nature now. We can be with the aliveness of what it is that nature's offering in any given moment now. And then the third is the honoring of embodiment. And this is a beautiful aspect that Ayurveda and Tantra share as spiritual traditions. Not every spiritual tradition and religious tradition out there honors embodiment. Some, in fact, deny embodiment. Can you think of ways in which, you know, some of the religious traditions deny embodiment? Self-whipping, for example. I don't just mean literally, but the ways in which we might confine ourselves. So, you know, excessive fasting or abstinence, or all the various ways we cut ourselves off from the embodiment. Whereas actually Ayurveda and Tantra, they have a reverence also for nature in the embodiment. And this can be a renewed joy and love, and even a fresh love for some of us of what it is to be in this feminine body, what it is to be in this body, and what it is to have a spirituality that's also body-centric on some level. Spirituality that really comes to acknowledge and inquire into cellular wisdom, the fibrous wisdom of a body that holds a consciousness, a form that dances with life, that dances with goddess. What is this miraculous thing that's ever changing, and also that pulses with prana shakti, that pulses with prana, with life energy? So both Ayurveda and Tantra bring us into intimacy, guide us into intimacy with knowing that more deeply, knowing this field of our embodiment more deeply. And that's been a huge gift, I have to say, for this embodiment and the consciousness that lives here, because for many, many years, I feel that I was quite cut off from that. You know, I lived much in the head. The cerebrality took over from this. And many of us are taught that also, right? We're taught to be more of a head. and less of a body. So what would it look like to really start to explore the lived wisdom that lives as Prakriti, as nature here? So to be embodied rather than encaged. And this is a powerful one. Not that we're encaged, we're held, we're imprisoned in this body, but we're free in our embodiment. That we live in the freedom and the vastness of this physical form and all of the energetics that play out here. And a recognition also that wakefulness, divinity, is not something outside of the human sphere or outside of our physical form, our vital form also. You know, the great yogic master and yogic being since passed and left the body, Aurobindo, he spoke about the different, what we could almost call the different bodies or levels of being. And he said that true yoga is an integration, an integral yoga, where enlightenment and kundalini and shakti comes into the very vitality of our being, the vital. The vital is the one that asks for food and sleep and sex. It asks for all of those things. The vital one, actually, that this one is not separate from also the what we could call the supramental, the one who is connected to cosmic intelligence, that they can actually come together to be integrated as one. And he coined the term integral yoga, actually. And he had a beautiful consort called the Mother. Actually, Serena has been with me in Oroville, which is a beautiful city based upon their envisioning in the south of India and these teachings of integral yoga. And you see this exact thing, the honoring of embodiment, because in that place, there's an honoring of right education, of integral yoga and education, of right exercise, awareness through body movement and various forms of exercise. That there's also an integration into nature. They've planted something like 400,000 trees in this community over the years. So many trees have been planted. So reverence for the embodiment, the vital, also found in trees. I'm just giving you one example. But Ayurveda and Tantra are an integral yoga, if I can say it in that way. It's the yoga brought down into the vitality of our embodiment. That it says wakefulness, divinity can be celebrated here. And then that, of course, includes everything from eating to farting and pooping to making love to having a quickie. That all of this can actually be in an honoring. In fact, that there can be an honoring and a wakefulness and a divinity that can be found here. I share with you very personally, this last week, I spent some time with my beloved, and we had a dinner that we were going to see some people for. And we had about 15 minutes and we had this intense connection, just before the dinner. And he said, perfect, then it's time for a quickie. Right? And I looked at him and I said, perfect. It's so beautiful to have that playful divine connection, even in a moment like that. There was joyful depth of contact, but then the sexual expression was had in a quick moment. There's always these concepts I hear of Tantra that it has to involve, like 7 hours of long, drawn out, ritualized sex. Wakefulness, divinity, honoring of embodiment can be found in all sorts of ways. In fact, right? It can be found in all sorts of beautiful ways. So I'm just giving you that as an example. This celebration can be found in so many different ways. And some of you are saying, 7 hours, not possible, Tiffany. Sean is going, I have 2 kids. I was just hoping for half an hour, right? So a lovemaking quickie sounds great to me, right? So whatever it might be. So this honoring of embodiment is in all forms. I'm saying sexuality, but it's in all the ways in which we dance through this body. And a beautiful aspect of Ayurveda and Tantra is to be free in and through our embodiments, to be really alive in these embodiments. So these 3 pointings I find to be the shared pointings that we're going to tickle out, we're going to draw out, we're going to explore together in these gifts of Ayurveda and Tantra for us specifically in this time as women. They're there for all beings, but specifically for us as women. So I want to see if there's questions, if there's things that are arising or comments or things that might be coming up for you as I've shared this, anything that might be there for anyone. Something that might be arising for anyone, just checking.
For me, it just sort of is like, it's nice. It's like permission to enjoy your body. I don't know. There's something that, like, I guess ingrained or conditioned that is sort of like, I don't know, there's something weird about that or uncomfortable, but to be able to just enjoy your body, and that's okay, and that's normal, it's good.
Yeah.
Like, it's, yeah, that's what just kind of popped up for me.
Yes, thank you
Felt
so
nice.
much, Abby. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, somehow this, being synonymous with I can eat pleasurable food and have pleasurable experiences and also be in the wakefulness of my being. Somehow in the Judeo-Christian dogmatic structure, we like lost that concept. We got brainwashed out of it. Somehow we have to deny all of those things. And this is not really a feminine-centric approach to spirituality and also to religion. So many of us, it's like a renewal of, oh, really? I can have all that and? So I love that you're sharing that, Abby. Others?
Tiffany, when you speak of embodiment and the freedom, where I've noticed that a lot of the conversations was around the physical part of it, being free or dancing or movement. But in the beginning, when you were sharing it, you shared cellular wisdom and fibrous wisdom. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think we often think of our embodiment as this skin and the hunk of muscles and skeletal structure, right? And we forget the tiniest cellular wisdom, which is the universality that lives in the tiniest fibers also of our physicality. So when I say that, I mean both physically, that these cells have their own universality. I mean, these cells, the DNA, the RNA that lives within us, is not just physical, but that it's also physical and it also has an ancestral wisdom. I mean, there is an energetics to this. There are impressions from manas, from the psychology that's lived throughout our ancestry, that lives in the somatics, that lives in the expression, the crystallization of our bodies. I don't know how many of you have heard the term before, somatic, but somatic means what's been somatized, what's in the soma, which is both physical and also energetic. So when we talk about this embodiment, absolutely, and I'm so glad that Shalini has pointed to this, we are talking about physical matter, and we're also talking about beyond and within that matter. That there's energy here, there's history, there's ancestry, there's elemental wisdom, there's the universe really encapsulated in each one of us. This is what the Vedas offered. There are even beautiful images in some of the original Upanishads that showed that there's this macrocosmic egg that is the universe, and then there's a microcosmic egg, and that's you. You're a little egg of the big egg, right? That's me. That everything is coherent, that everything has a correspondence, that there's 7 planes in that macrocosmic universe, 7 planes of existence, and there's 7 chakras and planes of existence, and there's a direct coherence that all of that that's out there is actually also here, and vice versa. Everything that's up is down, and everything that's down is up. That all of this can be mirrored, in fact. So when Shalini asked this question, it's like, yes, on a cellular level, we have the most minute embodiment, these tiny ways in which our body is expressing its freedom. But also we have such a history of living wisdom that lives within all of us, and this great sagehood, we could say, of all the women before us and in front of us. All of the beings, all of the planetary wisdom, all of the cosmic intelligence is said to live in our very cells, in fact. Like the things we're sharing here, it's not new. None of this is new. Right? It might be that it just, it pokes open, it pries open, it untethers something so that then we go, oh yeah, of courseness. That's actually always my hope, that we all go, of course. Like this great yesness springs up. This is our cellular wisdom also, of course. I never
Thank you,
thought of
Tiffany.
it that way, but your cells did, right? Oh, you're so welcome, Shelley. Thank you for the
It's so
question.
funny that, oh, you're very welcome. Somatic. I actually have just been introduced to this term in a different way, and it was actually through someone I was speaking to. I'm actually dealing with a few physical injuries, body injuries. I've had a shoulder injury, and I've had a hamstring injury, and everything is on my left side. And she said that somewhere down the road with trauma, you happened to somatically place your trauma in these parts of your body, even though, you know, I had a piece of equipment at work fall on me. She goes, but it was almost as if somewhere down along the road, your cells had taken that upon itself, and that injury wasn't me. And you are dealing with it in that moment. It's somatic healing and somatic recovery. So it's actually a very new concept to me. You're sharing it in a very different lens. She shared it in a completely different concept, but it's all the same principles.
Yes, yes. Yes, and there's a lot of work now also on somatic experience. It's a bit of a fad term, actually, somatic experiencing and trauma release, and these terms are so you can even do some of your own research, all of you, around this. But the word soma is quite synonymous actually with ayus, like it means the aliveness. You know, soma is really the life force on some level. So, but just coming more from the Latin terminology. So when we somatize, it means we take mental, emotional material and we live it into and impregnate it into, crystallize it into our embodiment. And that's why we see if someone's dealt with grief for a long time in their life, what happens to this space of the heart? It tends to retract, right? The shoulders tend to move forward. This tends to draw back. What if someone's dealt with sadness for a long time? The head tends to fall. We can see what's happening with the chin, with the body. We can see what happens also with the eyes, right? There's a drooping that can start to happen. We all know this, right? We know it because we know this living force. As we see it in another, we can know it in a moment. We can map it. We can feel it from another. Sometimes we're not as objective to see it in ourselves, but we can definitely see it in those around us. We know what it is to somatically experience and receive that resonance off another. So much of these traditions is about relieving and releasing some of that which has been somatically held. Some of the things that have been held here. And this is what yoga, tai chi, qigong, and all the contemporary practices, tapping, all the various ways in which even just exercise, you know, the various releases we may have in these ways. Any other questions or anything that's coming up before we take a small break? Anything that's there? Okay, so then before we take our break, I'm just going to show you in the slides, I've outlined more or less what our 5 sessions together will encompass, and maybe we'll have a 6th. This is often what happens. You know, I want to make sure that you really have a blessed completion and wholeness to our time together. But these are the intentions that we'll touch on. Womanhood, we'll look at rhythmic rituals, so the rituals and the rhythms of Prakriti, of nature. We'll look together at sacred sensuality, our feminine cycling, and also the living goddesses. We're going to look at the Mahavidyas, the great Vedic goddesses, and understand something about ourselves through the wisdom of them and the invocation of them. So these will more or less be what will take our time in the next 5 sessions together around. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, a 6-minute break. We'll come back at 1/4 after. Okay, enjoy a little moment of stretch and some water, and we'll see each other then. Okay, so finding our way back. So let's dive right into this first topic, which is the most appropriate place to start, which is this question. No, woman, this word woman that we use. And today, more than ever, it seems this is becoming even more of a question, especially in the North American fields, because there's more and more question about gender, right? This has become more of a contemporary discussion, actually. So even using the word woman has become a bit of a faux pas. There's a lot of political correctness around this now as well. And this is an interesting one for all of us to bring inquiry to, and to look at what the Vedic tradition has to offer us around this. You know, I'm not here to stand necessarily for one thing or another, although I would say that the river of the Vedas is something that's very near and dear and feels like a blessing of wisdom to my heart and being. But really, this is about opening us into an inquiry for each one of us to come to how this research and experiment of our lives brings us into a deepened understanding of our existence. So this word we use, woman, or even the consideration that there is woman and man, what does that mean? What does it mean for each one of us when we even hear that, or when we identify as, if there's identification as woman? So what is woman? What does it mean for us? And why birth as woman? Why birth as woman? Do we birth as woman, or do we birth as man? What does it mean to have been birthed as woman? And when I come to this course today, it's becoming more challenging on some level, because it can be more about an identification rather than a gender assignment at birth. So people may say, can I come to the woman's immersion who actually have the genitals or the sexual identification as a man? So now this question starts to arise in a very pertinent and very potent way, actually, today in today's field. Woman, what is a woman, and why birth? Or do we birth as a woman? And is there such thing as genderlessness as well? So we're not going to come into a dialogue of this now, but for the next week, I really invite all of us to be in an inner dialogue and to be in an ongoing contemplation of this. Even the word woman, the etymology of woman, to be born with certain genitals also. Is that what defines my womanness? Are there certain qualities that also arise within my being that I would say that makes me a woman? Was I born as a woman, or was I born in genderlessness? What does it mean to adhere to or identify to womanhood also? All of these things, powerful inquiries for all of us to come to. And there's a beautiful revealing and story that comes from the Vedic tradition that can maybe help some of us to understand how the Vedas, including Ayurveda and Tantra, so just for all of us to be on the same page, Ayurveda and Tantra are two Vedic sciences. And what that means is we have this great umbrella of the Vedas. And the Vedas were an osmotic tradition, if I can say it, a verbal tradition, shared from master, from teacher to students, in the form of satsang, in the form of truth sharings about existence. And later, the Vedas started to be shared through codification. And today we think of the Vedas as 4 texts that exist on this planet. But actually, before those texts, there were beings who shared these things that were later codified in those texts. And what the Vedas are they're really an exploration of what it is to be alive, what it is to exist, what it is to be consciousness and form and earth, and what the whole meaning of this life is. And from those Vedas, and we say that the Vedas emerged specifically out of the geography of the Indus Valley of the place of India, but the emerging of these, from that emerged various sciences, or let's just say tracks, different tracks. And one of those tracks is Ayurveda, and one of those tracks is also Tantra. But other tracks from the Vedas are things like Jyotish, Vedic astrology, Sanskrit, the knowledge of Devanagari, of the Sanskrit language and the writings of, and to be deeply infused in that. Vastu. Vastu is like a feng shui, but from the Vedic tradition, how we align geographically to the space. Dance and music. There are so many different tracks, or so many different sciences that emerged all from the Vedas. And so Ayurveda and Tantra emerged from here as well. But in the entirety of the Vedic tradition, there is this understanding of what is called Ardha Narishwara. So you can say these things at home. I may use some Sanskrit, and it can be helpful to say them at home. They're like mantras. So Ardha means half, and Narishwara is a composite of 2 words, Nadi or Nada and Ishwara. Ishwara means the masculine aspect of God, like Lord, and Nadi is the reference to the feminine, Parvati, to the feminine aspect of God. So we could say God and goddess, half God, half goddess. That's what this means. And when we look at the image, what do we see? What do you see when you look at that? You see this coming together, this ultimate marrying of the feminine and the masculine. This ultimate, what we would call in the yogic tradition, hatha yoga, the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine coming together to be one. No separation. Again, this ultimate interconnection, this ultimate lovemaking of being. And so the Vedic story of Ardha Narishwara tells us the following, It tells us that every being and all that we see in this universe is a perfect coming together, a marrying, a love making of the feminine and the masculine, that they come together to create wholeness, that all of life is making love, and all of life is this togetherness of what we might call the masculine Shiva and the feminine Shakti. How many of you have heard these terms before, Shiva and Shakti? Just want to check in and see where we are with things. And we'll engage with this more and more. Okay, so I really don't want anyone to feel intimidated by terms. So I will also, anglicize it, but you just ask at any point, and it will also be in our slides. So Shiva and Shakti. And what are the other terms we use for this? So masculine, feminine, Shiva, Shakti. And what other terms from the Vedic tradition? Anyone aware of what we might use? Another two specific terms when we talk about the coming together of the masculine and the feminine, which comes more from Samkhya. Some of you have studied this with me. Purusha and Prakriti, right? So the marrying of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is the unmanifested, pure masculine consciousness. And Prakriti is what? The dance of nature, of manifestation. So this marrying of consciousness and form, consciousness and manifestation. And so the Vedic story of Ardhanarishwara shows us and exemplifies to us that everything is this marriage of consciousness and form, of the masculine principle of directionality and penetration, and the feminine force of receptivity and procreation. That everything is this coming together, this great lovemaking of these two, inclusive of our being, inclusive of our embodiment, in fact. And so in that regard, what does it have to tell us? It has to tell us that actually in our perfect wholeness, we can recognize that all of us are a perfect composite, a perfect consort, a perfect intermarriage of the masculine and the feminine, that we all live by Purusha and Prakriti, that we are this great togetherness of this, that we are this great unity of this. And it's actually said that in times gone by, that all beings were in this perfect wholeness. They were almost asexual, that there was an asexuality also in the expressive nature of the embodiment. But today, and it's said that in Kali Yuga, in the era of today, we have this inner marriage. We absolutely have this inner togetherness of Narishwara, of half man, half woman, of half Purusha, half Prakriti, half Shiva, half Shakti. But that in this time of Kali Yuga, which is a time much more in the vital field, much more in the vital field of desires and of being in the world and of being in physicality also, that this marrying also came to find duality in forms so that beings on this planet could come together to again remember their wholeness. And that in that way, we were born in duality. Some of us born more in the Nadi, and others of us born more in the Ishvara. And hence why we see this form of duality, why some are born as boys and some are born as girls. Does this mean that we don't have the inner marrying in the inner landscape of our being? Absolutely not. It means that all of us in the resplendency and the fullness of what it is to be an awakened human being, that we can come to that. And actually, when you look to great masters, you often see that they start to look ambidextrous. They start to look quite asexual. Think of many great beings, whether they take it feminine embodiment, whether they're born as woman or born as man, they start to look somewhere in the middle, or they might exemplify something in the middle, qualities of both. Have you noticed that before? It could be masters or great beings, philosophers. We might start to notice that they have this kind of ambidexterity where it's like, yeah, they have qualities of the feminine, but also qualities of the masculine. And they do seem on some level to have a genderlessness, or I even like to call it a gender fullness. We're engendered by everything. We're engendered by everything. There's no part of us and no part of the universe that doesn't live here. So there's this gender fullness that actually expresses itself through us. But nevertheless, today, the reality is, and this is part of the jnana, the experiential wisdom to come into clear seeing, Today, for one reason or another, life has asked us to be born also in an external expressive form of duality. Some of us born more in the Nadi, and some of us born more in the Ishvara. And that there is constantly this magnetic principle that calls for Ardhanarishvara to be reunited in our wholeness from duality to oneness, to recognize our interconnectedness. Hence the pole, hence the call to make love and be together. Hence the call to find this marrying also externally, not just internally. It can be found and known internally, but something in the expressive human embodiment is also called to do this externally. Now, me saying this, I'm glad that it's in an intimate environment, because this can be very controversial on our planet today. You see, part of the reason I never really shared Tantra to the exoteric, so Tantra to the greater populace, is because I really feel that it's for a select few. I feel that there are some of us who are ripened and at a point, and I don't say this from a place of arrogance or a place of specialdom in the way in which I'm acknowledging this, but I feel that we have to ripen to a certain point of being able to see these things and not see them as conflictual or paradoxical or controversial. That, you know, by me saying this at this point, some of us, you know, it can bring up a little bit of friction of some of the hypnosis that happens in the exoteric, that happens in popular culture, and especially today. You know, well, we don't need anybody, right? That's one thing I hear. We don't need anyone. And when the pleasure principle, when we talk about that, well, I can pleasure myself. Yes, you absolutely can, you know? And when we talk about feminist movements, well, I don't need to marry anyone. And also when we talk about sexuality and heteronormative concepts, well, what about homosexuality? Of course, Tantra recognized that we can call to that marrying with various beings, but honestly speaking, that there is an expressive reality that shows that some of us are born due to karma in a feminine embodiment, and some are born in a male embodiment. This is a reality. And today, to say this can be a bit challenging because of much of the hijacking of what's happened currently when it comes to concepts around this. But nevertheless, there is a negative pole and there is a positive pole, and those magnetize. A negative and a negative don't stay magnetized for long, and a positive don't stay magnetized for long either. This isn't in any way denying sexual orientation or homosexuality. It's just saying that all of this can be inquired into, that there is, for some reason, procreation that's born when a man and woman come together, and not when a woman and woman or a man and a man come together. Now, all of that is also questioned today because we have, I don't know how many things are happening, but I've seen so many different expressions of men having babies, and I can't even keep track anymore, right? With all of these things that are occurring. But the story and the Vedic understanding of Ardhanarishvara is that when we come into deep contact in the home of self, we are gender fullness. Everything lives here in the self of being. We're not only man, we're not only woman, we're not only directionality, and we're not only receptivity. We're everything. We're the universe and the entire abode of what it is to be. But what we also come to recognize is that all of us have karma and samskaras. And that karma and those samskaras, those tendencies that are born of the karma of your natal chart, of your call to be birthed, asked you to be born in the embodiment of a woman or a man. And as we sit here together, that we've been asked to be born for karmic reasons to work out in this life through the teachings of life, womanhood, this time around. For some reason, we've been asked to go through this time around. I don't know how many of you have had the experience, but I've had the experience of dreams and also meditative presence where I felt the energy of being a boy or being a man. I remember I used to be confused by that sometimes when I would have, you know, past life recognitions of my boyhood. So in other lives, maybe we were born as a man. We most likely were. All of us experienced, you know, this fluctuation of what occurred. At least this is the understanding in the Vedas. But this time around, we sit here and we contemplate womanhood because we have been born through the karma of that. This is one of the tendencies, along with some other tendencies. along with some other things, some other masks. Some of us were born with tendencies towards anger. Some of us were born towards, or with propensities and tendencies towards whatever it might be, that lives in our being. But one of the primary things that came was that you were born of a certain culture, a certain place, a certain family, and a certain gender. Those are some of the earliest qualitative deciding factors of our karma. And in the Vedic tradition, inclusive of Ayurveda and Tantra, accepting the karma means accepting the gift of life's teachings. It means saying yes to the Satguru of life. Satguru is the term that we use, which means truth teachings. I'll write it here in the chat, which means that life is teaching us stuff all the time. So inclusive of, it's teaching us something by asking us to be born this time around as a woman. And when we deny that, this is a denial of Satguru. It's a denial of the truth teachings of life force. Now, I'm not saying that if we're gay or if we have, top or bottom surgery, that we're necessarily denying it. That's all an inquiry that's happening, right? With transgender and everything that's happening. But what I am saying is that if we're in a constant no to the various life experiences that we're given, inclusive of our gender, we're in a no also to life's revealings, to life's teachings. So accepting the imprint, accepting the tendency to be born as woman and all that might come with that this time around, which is very diverse, because woman, Prakriti, is everything. So I'm not saying, the kind of tired, bored, antiquated concepts of what it is to be a woman, like, the thought that a woman does this or does this. Woman's everything. There's nothing that she isn't, actually. She's all of Prakriti. So she's the bitchy and she's the sweet, and everything that's found in between. This is woman, right? Actually, she's the one that can lift the car if needed when her, baby cub is in despair or in distress. And she's the one who can also pet the cub to bed, to sleep, right? And bring her to breast. So all the things in between. This is Prakriti, actually, as woman. But do we accept this gift? Do we accept that for some reason, each one of us has been asked to be born in womanness? And a lot of our contemporary conditioning has led to a lot of denial around this. What I mean by that is, especially in the contemporary conditioning of patriarchy, a lot of us have denied what it is to be in the feminine rhythm of being, to be in the full spectrum of Prakriti, to be in all of her wilds, right? Like, this is something that I always very clearly now express to anyone that I'm in relationship with, whether it's a friendship or it's an intimate relationship. What you see now is just one aspect of Prakriti. I have no idea how she's going to show up. Nadi shows up in a lot of different ways. So you better be on par and on game for this one, because she's going to show up in a diversity of ways. I have no concept or no commitment to in any way contrive or to hold her or to contain her. This is the freedom of the feminine, in fact. So really accepting the fullness of womanhood. And what's so beautiful about sitting in woman's circle is that some of us express her in very different ways. She moves through us in different ways. And a celebration of womanhood can be a celebration of Prakriti in all of her various ways. It's like when I look at all of you, I see the Mahavidyas, I see the great goddesses in all of her different forms. Sometimes she's fiery and has conviction. Sometimes she's soft and she guides the way. Sometimes she cuts heads off, and sometimes she brings death and impermanence. And sometimes she brings endless amounts of gold coins, right? So she has all these different aspects. And I can see all of you are grinning, because it's like, yeah, I've got some of all of that happening. But we all have these different aspects of womanhood also that express in us. So I find the story of Ardhanarishwar as a beautifully empowering one for us to recognize, yes, I've been born as woman, and I'm also totally resplendent. I'm totally complete. Man and woman both live here. And I also take on the recognition of my karma to have been born as woman. And what does that mean for me? What does that mean for me this time around? What does it not mean for me? to allow this to be a deep vichara, to allow this to be a deep inquiry for each one of us, and to see the ways we might have denied this thus far in our lives. So let's pause there for a second and see what might be there for you. What reflections are coming up, or what questions are arising? What might be there for any of you? Please feel free to share. Anything.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you so much for that deep conversation. Something that came up for me as you were speaking about karmic womanhood and being born as a woman is the extension of reincarnation.
Yeah.
And I remember as a child, as I was learning Hinduism, my mom would speak to me about reincarnation, and she took this analogy and said that you were born a woman or you were born a male due to your karma from your previous life. And in this life, you have certain duties that must be fulfilled.
Yes.
And if those duties, and she would talk about, a pail, and she's like, and every drop of water is a duty that is fulfilled. And I'm using the word duty as a very loose word.
Yeah.
And if those duties are not fulfilled, you are reincarnated to continue to fulfill those duties.
Yes.
It's actually a very deep conversation, and that can go on for hours, just on reincarnation and looking at Shiv, Lord Shiv, and Goddess Parvati. I mean, we have reincarnation that's within our gods and goddesses, as you much know. You studied in India. So that in itself, you're able to look at that embodiment and say, this is how we exist. We exist in that way on earth. It is such a deep, deep conversation. So thank you so much for bringing that to light.
Thank you, Shalini, and also for bringing your mother also, right? The mother's wisdom here. And this is so beautiful, those drops in the bucket also. And again, that denying, that looking away from it, it's like it will come again and again, knock, 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 and the drop will get bigger, plunk, right? Are you getting the point yet? So these duties, exactly as Shalini said, also that word, when we translate into English, it doesn't always fit, but the dharmic responsibility, the responsibility of our soul, of our being, the responsibility of life herself. And there are certain samskaras. So samskara can mean tendency, but samskaras can also mean rites, passages. There are certain samskaras in a Vedic life that we go through throughout our lives to really fulfill some of these duties as well, to really, take on certain rights throughout the life. And it's a beautiful one to see, am I accepting? Am I in a yesness to this first responsibility, which said, yeah, it's a girl. Okay, what does that mean? It's been born in the feminine. And especially I feel now is such a beautiful time, because now more than ever on this planet, we have more and more celebration of the feminine also. Right? Like we've had such a tired history of there being an inequality in that. So there really is a comeback in so many ways of the feminine, and beautiful expressions. Like I remember sitting with the Dalai Lama in northern India, and he said, if anything is going to save this next century, it's going to be the mothers and the daughters. It's going to be the women. This is powerful for a Tibetan Buddhist to say, because much of Tibetan Buddhism is quite patriarchal. In fact, when you read some of the original scriptures and the way it's versed in Pali, or the way it might be translated from Pali, let's say it in that way. So beautiful. Thank you, Shalini. Anything else anyone wants to share at this point? Anything else that's there for you? Okay, then let's continue from here. So this word that I've been using, that we use in the Vedic tradition, Shakti or Prakriti, these words. These are the words that link us directly to our primary feminine essence. And Shakti means really in many ways the great mother, the entire feminine form. Prakriti means nature. And so we're all of nature. As I was saying a moment ago, there's nothing in the divine dance of energy that we cannot find ourselves likened to. This is a powerful understanding. You know, that my primary feminine essence is that I'm everything, everything that I see, all of both the tumult and the chaos, and also the great harmony and symphony of being. All of this Prakriti is likened to womanhood, to the feminine. So this is our link. Being the more connected we are to nature, the more connected we are also to our feminine essence, in fact. Let's take a little moment for reflection. So when we think about our authentic womanhood, let's write down just in 1 minute right now, 12 qualities of your Prakriti, of your feminine divine richness. So I'm going to time 60 seconds and let's go right now. So 12 qualities that you might write down. Ten more seconds. Okay. 12 is the number of the heart, of Anahata chakra. Let's hear from each one of you, one or two of the qualities that you wrote down about your divine feminine. So you can just all come off mute and share one or two. Just let them pop out as they came. So what came up for you?
But loving, strong, protector.
I just had caring, giving, nurturing, warm, forgiving.
I had protector and compassion and empathy.
Loving, supportive, driven, strong and weak.
I put brave, soft, fierce, patient, and my last one was cheerleader.
Anyone else want to share?
Fierce, compassionate, forgiving.
And Shalini, anything you want to share? Love? Okay. This can be a beautiful exploration just to sit with, you know, what are some of the divine qualities that move through me? What is not divine? You know, these qualities of being that move through me, what's not an expressive part of Prakriti. And this list could be inexhaustive to see all of her fluctuations, all of her dance, right? And as we come to explore later on in our time together, the Mahavidyas, the great wisdom goddesses, you're going to see that there's such a plethora of these various qualities of feminine being that she plays out in so many ways. So oftentimes we think I'm just this or I'm just that, but when we really start to tap into our womanhood, we can see, wow, I also resource this at times, or I also resource that, or there's a part of me that hasn't yet allowed that part of my womanhood to fully blossom. Now, growing up in Canada and in rural Canada, I had an idea of what it was to be a slut, right? This word, like there was an internal slut shaming. I think about it now, you know, I would never wear short shorts or a short skirt or something like that. It was like, you know, just such a faux pas. And so I remember denying it so much that I would wear like baggy clothes or baggy, you know, baggy longer shorts, boys kind of shorts, those kinds of things, because there was such an impressed upon idea around this. And then moving to Thailand and women wearing almost nothing and seeing the beauty of it and the expressive beauty of it, right? And then also living in India and seeing the expressive beauty of kurtas and a salwar kameez and, the body totally covered in a sari as well, and traveling around the world and seeing all these different expressions. I finally started to try on as an inquiry. Do I like wearing a tank top? What does it mean to have cleavage? Right? What does it mean to allow the inner expression of those archetypes, of all those aspects of the woman to move through and my being? Does it mean that purity doesn't live here also? She also does. Right? So all of these aspects can be actually inquired into. They can be questioned. How many of them are conditioned? How many of them have been externally conditioned? What would it look like to be free in our total womanhood and in all these various aspects? And when some of us also talk about the confining that might be around our sexuality or our sensuality or our relationships, getting in contact firstly with our self relationship, with Shakti, with the woman that lives here, allows the emanation of difference to come into any outer relationship. So firstly, in our self-relating, as that becomes more landed, we start to notice that then emanates change in the spaces around us. I can't tell you, and again, I say things very intimately and transparently here, but I can't tell you how many partners have said to me, I'm kind of in a bit of a shock because you both have this unbelievable pure aspect and a total sacred whore. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to, bring those together. Say, well, that's your job, not mine, because she already lives here. If that seems opposing to you, then that lives in you, that opposition. It doesn't live in me. But I had to come to that, women, because it used to be that only the aspect of purity, it required divorce and, it required a lot of things to really allow that enlivening, sacred miscarriage. A lot of things had to happen for that full enlivening of all aspects to come here and to make her way through here, right? So that opposition never lives in Prakriti. She's the womb of creation. She says, I've created all. So all these aspects can be enlivened within our womanhood. And then as they start to bubble up to the surface, then we also see the way in which they also express themselves into the spaces around us. So I was so happy to hear all the different qualities. And when Julie also said the strength and the weakness, all those aspects are here.
Can I share a reflection?
Absolutely.
Just as I was listening to all of them, and I did the same thing, a lot of my qualities were very soft and nurturing, maternal. But I think I left out some very important qualities, which was confident and bold. And I think at times, and I am guilty of it too, when we think of the feminine and we think of the qualities, we forget about our masculine side. And we have that masculine side, like as beautifully as you've shared today. And sometimes that masculine side gets overturned by our feminine side. And as we are describing our feminine qualities, it's so important to balance it out with that masculine side as well.
Yes, so beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Shalini. Okay, let's come back to our slides. We have about 10 minutes left together for this evening. So engaging in women's wakefulness then, these are some pointings that I've found. It's very anglicized, but it's taking the teachings of Ayurveda and Tantra and encompassing in something I would like to invite all of us to explore. So really waking to all these various aspects or inquiring into what wants to be birthed, what wants to reveal herself in us, can be found by connecting to these 3 V's, I find. Okay, and yes, your vagina can be part of that, but these 3 V's, firstly. So the first is our voice, the second is our vision, and the third is our vividness. Our voice is what wants to be expressed in our being. Like really in that full throttle Prakriti nature of our being. What wants to express itself? What is being held, caged? And we're going to talk about that in a moment. What part have we told ourselves that needs to be suppressed or repressed or can't express itself here? Like I said a moment ago, the sacred whore, and maybe me even using that term, you're like, like even that word, like, can she say that? Tiffany just said whore. Did anybody hear that? It's like, that's a big word to say. What's coming up? But it's amazing because when we use these words also, what comes up in us? It brings up inquiry as well, right? So the voice, what wants to be expressed in us that's been left latent or that's been also been suppressed? What's not allowing prana, Shakti, to be in her fullest form here? So it doesn't just mean this voice, but it means the full expression, the voice of your being. What wants to be expressed in your life? What's calling for great expression through your being? And women are the expressive source of life. So maybe it's expression in dance, maybe it's expression in various art forms, maybe it's expression in how you write, maybe it's expression in the way in which you converse with others, maybe it's expression in your maternal way, maybe it's expression in entrepreneurship and ideas and the creation of things. There's so many ways in which voice can be expressed. And so what's your voice? And as women, I feel if we get more attuned to what's that voice, what is it that's longing to be expressed in my life, you'll start to notice that there's a liberation of energy that starts to happen within us, a liberation of Prakriti. And the second is vision. What's your great vision? And actually, it's not even yours. What's the great vision that's asking for your dutiful instrumentation, for you to be an instrument of? What's the vision? And we often think, oh, then it has to be some vision, that lives lofty and out there. And it means I have to manifest something, huge. But so many of us, the vision of life could be that you raise amazing beings on this planet. That can be a beautiful vision of your life, but does it have potency? Does it have birth power behind it? Does it have Prakriti? Does it have nature? Does it have the oomph of earthquakes and tsunamis also in it? So what's the great vision? What's a great vision of your life? What's the great sankalpa of your life? And we really wake into our Prakriti nature, wake into our Shakti nature, when firstly we can locate what wants to be expressed, and we can locate the vision that expression is called to manifest. If that expression is more free, then the vision can also be impregnated by those expressive forms. So what is it? What's the great vision that lives within you? And that great vision can be the attitude in which you live out your life. Like, for example, the great vision is that I live on this life prayer, or I live on this earth prayerfully, or I live as a beacon of prayer and of goodness. It doesn't have to be in a concretized thing that I do. It can be in the way of being also. But what's the great vision? Do we have a great vision? Of course we do. Each one of us, as we tap into Shakti, as we tap into Prakriti, we can hear the way in nature is asking something of us. Each one of us. Each one of us has a place in the tapestry. Each one of us has a place in the mosaic of life. What's your tile piece? What's your threading in this place of the earth? What's Shakti asking of you? This is the great vision. And vividness. What enlivens your appetite? How do you get more vivid? What do you need to engage with in your life to really wake up Shakti? And for some of us, we might say that's sitting in a collective like this. That's being fed by, truth teachings, or sitting with other inspiring women. That's me having my exercise daily. That's me going out in nature. That's me. I have a beautiful friend that whenever she needs to enliven her appetite and her vividness, she just starts chanting wherever we are. She makes sounds. She starts doing sounding. And it's like, yes, or this is, yeah, there she is. Right? That's her thing. So all of a sudden you'll hear, aye, and you're like, okie dokie, we're in the shopping mall. That's what's happening. But this is how she enlivens her appetite, right? And then you see this vividness of Shakti. She's just radiant. I'm like, okay, something had to move. Something had to be alive to that. And then again, she's back on track. I see the river is moving, right? So what is it for each one of us that enlivens our appetite? Maybe it's what you eat, literally, what you ingest, the music you listen to, the aromatherapy you surround yourself with, the things you engage with in your daily life. So voice, vision, and vividness. And this upcoming week, this is your home play. What you're going to play with is, as Shakti, as Prakriti, how can I become more full, more invigorated in my voice, in my vision, and in my vividness? What are they? What wants to be expressed through me? What's the great vision of my life? And what enlivens my appetite? What things day to day do I need to do? I know for myself, if I don't spend time in nature, everything gets collapsed. My time in nature, she just directly wakes up the full force of Shakti. I can feel her. And then I'm in alignment with the vision, and I can feel my expressive force, the various ways in which I yearn to express, start to become more and more clear. Some of you are saying, Shalini was saying, the chasing of the sun and the moon, right? This is the vividness that enlivens our appetite for sun and moon and all the cycles between them. And then we start to see more clearly of the vision and also what wants to be expressed through us. So this is going to be your homework for this week, is to really look at my voice, my vision, and my vividness. Now, if those in their fullness is really what brings us as women, but all beings, but also as women, into our great wakefulness, why is it that we're not just fully enlivened in them? Why are we not fully resourced in these? And I think this, and this will be the last thing we'll touch on for today, is something very important for all of us to recognize. These 3 V's often get collapsed because of our wounds, women's wounds. And what are some of the wounds, or some of the trajectory of the wounds that happen in our lives? And they happen really in 2 ways. One is through our intergenerational or our transgenerational karma. So we can have a primary mother and father wound, but especially through our maternal lines, if we can start to track some of the ways that maybe also our mothers and our grandmothers collapsed their voice and their vision and their vividness, we can learn a lot about ourselves as well. So when I started to understand, and I shared this today on the Ayurveda immersion, the history of alcoholism, especially, it was both in my maternal and my paternal line. But when I saw that in my maternal line, that there was a collapse of vividness by drinking, that this was a containment, a holding, or it would give the liquid courage, for example, for voice, right? If I could say it in that way, I started to learn so much about my own patterns, relationship early on in my life with addiction and also with alcohol specifically. Why I would turn to that, why I would use that as a crutch to potentially say or express or be more wild in my expression. Can any of you relate to that? Any of you see relationship to that? So there are various intergenerational karmas through the mother, the grandmother, and our great grandmothers that we can see have collapsed the voice, the vision, the vividness throughout the ages and throughout our ancestral lines. And getting more in contact with that not only liberates it for us, but what else do you feel it probably does? It liberates it for the ones who come after us, for the women we touch in our lives, not just our children, but anyone we touch in our lives. And it also liberates for those who came before us, even those who have passed. I feel today that the work that I do here and with all of this and with all of you joyfully is also liberating the wounds that even in the passing of my grandmother might still be held and felt in her etheric system. And that it frees something, it frees an entanglement that lives there in the ancestral holdings of my specific familial karma. So each one of us, as we do some of this work, we can start to notice the changes that happen in our lives, in our voice and our vision and our vividness, but also how that unlocks something in the fabric of our families. I've seen this a lot in the relationship with my mother, for example, how it's really exposed and revealed some of these things. And then the second is the cagings and the complexes that have come much from this karma. So what have we derived from our samskaras, our tendencies that bind and imprison us? So I often call these cagings and complexes. And what does that mean? The various core beliefs and the various tendencies that we've learned to shut ourselves down from our voice and our vision and our vividness. So it's almost like the karma is there, and then we develop certain tendencies based upon that karma, right? So these tendencies might be, for example, you want to travel this earth, and something in the ancestral karma has said a woman should stay at home. There's safety found by staying at home, not going too far, etc. And so we develop this tendency to somehow shut down our voice or shut down our wild expression of packing a bag and leaving and traveling, right? We develop these tendencies, which are cagings and complexes. So there are a few somatic practices that we can do around this, actually, that can be quite powerful. And one of those I want to give you is found in these integrations. So these are going to be your 3 integrations for this upcoming week. The first one is to connect with one of these sisters. So you will have each other's emails, and to create a little web of connection. Just take a moment, maybe call each other, or maybe send a message on WhatsApp, for example, or find a way to connect. And I'll put all of your emails together. So in a couple of days, you'll have that, or reach out an email, whatever it might be. And the next one is going to be commit to 3 days of nature bathing. Be with Shakti, be with nature, be with Prakriti. The closer we are to nature, the closer we are to our own nature, the closer we are to also invigorating our voice, our vision, and our vividness. The more time we spend bathing in her, the more wisdom and cellular wisdom she wakes up, and the more she clears some of those somatic holdings of the cagings and the complexes. She brings us to presence. She brings us to the now. She renews our spirit. And we start to notice that some of that karma that's been held can really be released just in the holdings of nature and being surrounded by that. So committing to at least 3 days of nature bathing. What does that look like? Any way you want to bathe. Bathe in the sun, bathe in the rain, bathe in the forest, right? We can call all of these bathings. Bathe in the air. Today I was sitting on my deck and the spring breeze, just bathing in the spring breeze. It was just really touching the body in such beautiful ways. So bathing in nature, being in her presence. And then the last one is going to be to enact something I call cage and release. So here's the practice, and this is what we'll finish with. These cagings and complexes can be felt somatically. So for example, when you have a tendency that is less than your feminine freedom come up, that is less than you being in your womanhood wild, you can feel how it literally shuts things down. It creates a cage and release. So for example, the example I gave before, this feeling of being free and traveling the world, right? That might come up for a young woman. And I'm using that because someone mentioned that recently, actually, to me. And then the messaging that comes, the intergenerational karma, the messaging that's come from family or culture, like I shouldn't do that. I should go to school. I should be a mother, all these shoulds that might come. What's felt in the body? Give me some examples. What kind of things might you feel in the body when the mind comes up against that natural longing that might be there? How might the body feel?
I can share something.
Yes.
Recently, I felt as if I could not express myself, and I started to feel symptoms around my throat chakra.
Yes. Yes, like a choking or being held.
Clearing of throat.
Yes.
I developed some acne around there. It was really interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And Julie's saying something similar, like tightness in chest, weighted shoulders, right? These are somatic physical expressions of being caged, of a complex finding its way into a caging, encaging us, rather than having this expressive freedom of our embodiment. What other things do you feel when a caging comes up, when those mental cagings? What other ways does your body feel? What about tired or like an energy zapper? Right? Can anyone relate to that? I mean, I know that that's one for me. When I feel vivid, I feel like Energizer Tiffany, right? Like I've got endless battery power. Versus when I allow the hijacking of those old tired thoughts to come in and the habituations come in, it's like a zapping, a literal depletion of the energy. Headaches, going into isolation, absolutely. Yeah, feeling like, okay, I'll cage myself in isolation. Or the head, because we're becoming so heady rather than expressive in our embodiment, we become caged in the head, in the cerebral, right? Do you all relate to these? Can you understand the difference between feeling your expressive openness to your vividness, to your vision, to your voice, versus these cagings and complexes? So enacting cage and release, what is it then? Cage and release. The way this practice, I've been working with it with women and beings for many years, is the following. Firstly, it's about awareness. It's about the awareness of feeling the sensation of the cage. So the first thing is the noticing of the sensation. And we have hundreds of times in a day where we probably don't notice the somatic response of clenching down, but even one is enough. So try to notice one in a day. You notice that caging, you notice that holding, that clenching, and then you bring expansive breath, which means you bring breath, you bring the resource of prana, you breathe. So first is you become aware. The second is you breathe. You take a big, full inhale and a total and complete exhale. And as you do that, you feel how the body has taken shape. So for example, a headache, what starts to happen, with the head, the shoulders, etc. So you notice the cage, you take a big breath, you notice how much it's seated here. And then as you exhale, you shift the positioning. This is the release. So there's awareness, there's breath, and then there's the release of the positioning. So it's the same as what I talked about before. If you notice a caging is, you start to do this, you depress the heart back, you notice it, you notice the feeling of the caging, you notice the physicality of it, you take a big breath, and you allow the positioning to be different. You allow the heart to become expanded. You allow this tool of awareness to follow also in a change of form. This is a very powerful somatic release practice. When we start to do this, you will start to notice that you're literally shifting karma. You're literally changing these karmic impressions that have been living here for not only this life, but maybe the lives also of our parents and our grandparents, because constant change in body temperature. Yeah, this is an interesting one also that we can notice as well. I'm seeing that Shalini was writing this. When we start to do this, we may notice that, wow, I learned that from my mother, or I learned that from my father. I've learned embodied ways, physicalities that mirror things that I've seen around me. So this cage and release can be an ongoing embodied inquiry. This is what I often, call it. First, there's an awareness, an inner inquiry, and then there's an embodied inquiry. How do I take different positions? So these are your 3 integrations for the week. And the last one, try to do it daily. Try to see if you can catch one time in the day. Someone says something, or you say something to yourself, and you notice, wow, there's that energy of caging. There's that energy of holding, of clenching. And for this week, get in contact with your voice, your vision, and your vividness. Let me read to you in these slides. I had put a beautiful poem from one of my favorite female poetresses and also mystics, Mirabai. She was a beautiful Indian saint, and she's very naughty, actually. She's risque in many ways, especially for her time on this planet and her time of living in form. And she offers the following. To be born in a human body is rare. Don't throw away the reward of your past good deeds. Life passes in an instant. The leaf doesn't go back to the branch. The ocean of rebirth sweeps up all beings hard, pulls them into its cold, running, fierce, implacable currents. Giridhara, your name is the raft. So God, you could say, your name is the raft, the one safe passenger. Take me quickly. All the awake ones travel with Mira, singing the name of life, the name of God. She says with them, get up, stop sleeping. The days of a life are but short. Get up, stop sleeping. The days of a life are but short. It's amazing. She has this feminine offering, of wisdom, like live your life out in voice, in vision, in vividness, right? And this is what she's offering. All the awake ones travel with Mira, singing the name. Take me quickly. Such a beautiful passage. Life passes in an instant. The leaf doesn't go back to the branch. So women, anything that's here for you right now, anything you'd like to share or anything that's arising in this moment? Anything that might be coming up for any of us?
I'll speak.
Yes, Shauna.
As soon as you posted the voice, vision, and vividness, I immediately thought, I'm blocked.
Mm.
I'm blocked.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. Thank you for sharing that also, Shauna. Yeah, I think we can all probably relate to this. Even as I say it, Shauna, I think me too. You know, like these places where we can all support each other to be more free in ourselves and in the gift of our lives and on this planet at this time. We need this. We need your voice. We need your vividness. We need your vision. Yeah. Bless you for sharing that. It's vulnerable. Mm. Well, let's work with that Cajun release. How about that? How does that sound for the week?
Mm-hmm.
Your family's going to be like, what's happening? Nothing. Hmm. What else? What else is there for others? What else arises? Next
When
week,
you
we're going
speak,
to dance a little bit together, okay? As well. We're going to do, you know, inch by inch, we're going to do some practices, some other practices together. So this week, you do it in your own time. Next week, we'll dance like no one's looking. Shalini, what were you going to say?
Tiffany, when you said Cajun release, I mean, it's a very challenging process, even when I think through it, because there are, being of a South Asian background, and, you know, perhaps many other people can relate, and some parts of my family are very traditional. And there's a fear of, you know, there are certain people in my family that do believe that a woman should not be far from her home.
Yes.
If it's night outside, doesn't matter if you're in your 40s, why is she outside when it's dark?
Yeah.
And still living in the Western world, it is a very traditional way of thinking. You can't fault them. The only reason I say that is because a lot of them have grown up in India with these traditions and are seniors. So what you do, you respect it.
Yeah.
But you know in your heart that there's been evolution. But it's you still sit in a fearful place, because how do you release that?
Mm.
You know, and how do you help them accept the place that you're in? Sometimes you have to hide it.
Mm.
That is a time when you cannot express. You have to hold back on your expressions. And you're not hiding anything bad. It's just the fact that you want to be outside or perhaps traveling, you know?
Yes. Oh, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing this, Shalini. Yeah, and if it has to be hidden in the expressive external, how can it not be hidden in the internal? How can we hear and honor that internal voice, right? Or where are there spaces that it can be shared, like here as well? And I think of great beings who have been imprisoned, literally physically imprisoned, but free of the soul. You know, think of the diaries of Anne Frank, right? What she expressed in that. So expression doesn't always mean that everyone has to hear it. Because sometimes, you know, like I shared about even our space together, not everyone, it's possible for them to hear it this time around. No, maybe next life they can hear that. So who can hear it, or who is it, you know, to hear these songs of the soul also? Other sharings, beautiful women. I feel like today already we've gone really deep and intimate together. Touched some things. Other things that are here for any of us? Anything else anyone wants to share? I'm aware of the time also. Julie, yes?
I was just going to say that it can be very frightening and very vulnerable to have a voice as a woman, because there is a sense that we support others in having a voice.
Yes. 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 That's a powerful reflection that you're offering right now. Absolutely. Absolutely. yeah, the willingness, the courage, of our feminine wild to also hear the voice of another, to hear radical honesty of life, to stand in the courage of that. What an amazing liberation that would be for so many of us on this planet at this time, to really be up for hearing the heart of another, to not want them to cage, right? To not ask that of the people around us, actually.
And to model that for our younger ones.
Yes. Yes, recently I had a dear sister. She said to me when I was away on vacation last week, she said, "Oh, I'm just going to leave $20 because I did this thing in the shala and I should have asked before I bought it." And it was like this whole entangled thing. And she texted me this thing and I said, radical honesty. It really doesn't matter. I'm fine with what you purchased. Please don't leave $20. And she said, "Oh, but I'm going to." And I said, when I say that I'm being radically honest, let's just allow it to be efficient and open and so completely like a raft of connection. So now you tell me how you feel. I feel small, she said. I feel like I did something wrong. I said, beautiful. Let's meet there. Let's meet there. But you doing a caging of I'll leave $20 and I'll do all these things and then I'll half apologize and do all of that. Let's not do that. Let's meet there. And it was amazing because she said, wow, this is so much fear comes up to be seen like this. But also it was the person who was cleaning, to be seen like this, to be invited into this kind of, connection with another woman. But she said, but I feel so invigorated, feel quite alive by it also, that I can just say what I need to say. Like I feel small and I feel like I did something wrong. And you say you absolutely didn't. And that's it. We're done. There's no drama. I'm not going to lose my job. It was amazing, right? In these small ways with beings that we never even imagined we would have that kind of impact or connection with. No ash, no echo left, right? And no $20 needed. Other things, any other things to share? So beautiful to hear you sharing. Very touched.
I really loved how you were talking about how just to express whatever you are in each moment. And I feel like it's like permission to just to do that. And I can just imagine my husband being like, oh, who knows what's going to come out. It's like, I don't know. I'm just going to let it come out. So it feels kind of liberating, but, but also could probably, feel a little crazy, which is probably fine. But I love that just permission to just be, yes. Without trying to box it all in or, yeah. So
thank you, Abby, for that. And also your sex will be invigorated from that. He's going to be like, wait, who's Abby?
Oh boy.
Okay, lovelies. Anyone else feeling really the impulse to share in any way? Okay, let's conclude together with a chant. I welcome you to sit up nice and tall, to find that alertness in the spine, to feel Shakti for a moment. Just allow the body to slightly rock. Feel an undulation along the spine. Feel what it is to sit here together, all of the various energies that live here now. And then if it feels comfortable, let the hands settle into the heart space. And we're going to chant a chant that recognizes our wholeness. So repeating after me. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we recognize as this prayer offers, I am this, I am that, I am completeness, wholeness, totality. There is nothing other than that exists here. May we all come to the recognition of our great Purna, of our great wholeness. Namaste. Thank you, beautiful ones. You can come off mute. You can say good night to each other or good day, and we'll see each other next Wednesday together. It's a joy to get to know you, to meet you, to truly meet you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
So nice.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. So
Bye.
much love.
Bye.
Good night, Shalini, also. Bye, all.